Welcome to the REI Diamonds Show with Dan Breslin, your source for real estate investment jewels of wisdom.
Welcome to the REI Diamond Show. I'm your host, Dan Breslin, and this is episode 160 on Scaling Through A Players with Mike Matalone. Mike is an award-winning speaker and nationally recognized talent authority, as well as the founder and chief talent officer of the XP3 Talent System and Leadership Academy. A highly sought-after trainer, workshop leader, keynote speaker, Mike has published over 100 articles on the importance of having the right people in the right roles. And he's also the author of the best-selling book, Hire, Train, Retain, How to Get the Right People in the Right Roles, Doing the Right Things, which provides a hands-on guide for accelerating any company's efforts for transforming its biggest investment, its people. Mike has delivered more than 500 workshops and keynote presentations to business groups throughout the United States, Canada, and the UK. And today's episode is particularly timely as I, Dan Breslin, founder of Diamond Equity Investments, I am currently looking to attract a few A players, which we will subsequently train and hopefully retain, in the Diamond Equity business located in the southeastern United States out of the Atlanta, Georgia office. So without further ado, let's bring Mike on to the show. All right, Mr. Mike Matalone, welcome to the REI Diamond Show. How are we doing today?
Doing great. Thank you for the invite. Glad to be here.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you coming on the show, blocking out the distractions, and being willing to share of your wisdom. For posterity's sake here, it seems so important here with everything going on in 2020, but it's 7/7. July 7th, what a lucky day here. I have nice, clear, blue, sunny skies in Chicago. Whereabouts you calling in here from today?
Central Virginia. I live on a lake in the middle of nowhere, a place called
Bumpus, Virginia. I'm also on a lake, but we're right on the edge of Chicago here. Yeah, very interesting times that we have here. I'm glad you come on the show. So for any listeners who may not already know who you are or may not have heard of XP3 Talent and Leadership, can you kind of give a little bit of a Reader's Digest, maybe talk about your history in CEO coaching, just to kind of give the framework of where you're coming from, Mike?
Of course, Dan. Thanks. So back in the early 2000s, I was part of an organization called Vistage International, which, if you're not familiar, it's the world's largest CEO membership organization, and I facilitated 3 groups and coached about 45 CEOs over about a 5-year period. And every month they'd come together for a full day and bring their challenges and issues. And my job was to facilitate the discussions between them and help them come to conclusions by having the members help each other. And I noticed a pattern after a couple of years that it didn't matter whether it was a financial problem, an operational problem, sales marketing problem, production, whatever it was. In probably 90% of the cases, it always seemed to boil down to be a people problem, right? We didn't have the right people who knew how to address or resolve that particular issue. So after seeing this pattern, I started exploring and trying to figure out, well, how are people addressing this people issue? And most people, including myself at the time, were doing the best we could with what we had, which means we were using our gut, we were winging it, maybe we read something. And I noticed that in most successful organizations that there was a system, there was a process, there was a methodology that was utilized, to address things more efficiently and effectively. But I couldn't really find a process, system, methodology for addressing the people part of the business. So that's what got me motivated to go down this path. And in 2007, I gave up the coaching role to move into and start XP3 Talent. And fast forward to today, the XP3 Talent System is probably one of the most simplest, innovative processes and methodologies to help young, growing organizations achieve their goals more effectively by ensuring they got the right people in the right roles.
All right. So how did the CEOs in these groups back in, the 2000s, how did they come to the conclusion, like, oh gosh, I need to like hire a person for this? Like, I know like where I'm at, I have at my company, we did, I think $5 million in profit last year. We grew 55%, I believe, from the year prior, and we're on course. Our goal this year was to grow 92% to 10 million. We're probably on track to do 50 to 60% anyway, and we've had to attract people, plug them into the right roles. We don't necessarily have a system. In fact, Mike, just to give you the context and the listeners, my best partners, because the people I'm in business with are like, they're my partners on these deals. Like, we share in the losses, we share in the gains, and we're flipping houses, we're running projects together, the whole nine. The best partners I have on the team, some of the best, I shouldn't say all of the best, have come through my podcast. They were listening to the show just like this, and that's part of the, this is my system, if you will, for attracting new people to my organization. But how did some of the CEOs, like, we have a ton of lead flow. That's our problem. We have so many leads coming in that our team, it's a very high skill set for us. It's a very nuanced negotiation and working a lead and making a deal with the seller in one of our living rooms from a lead that called, Mike. That's kind of complex. It's not an easy learning curve for people to come up in our business, but we have too many leads, let's say, and then we're like, oh gosh, it's time to add a person. But can you give me some concrete examples of some of the other CEOs and the conclusion they came to is that, oh, I need X person, and what was X person, and like what was the problem they were going to solve for that specific CEO?
All right, so a lot there. So trying to simplify it. So I mean, like most entrepreneurs, and go back a few years when you were just getting started. Right. So many of us, we start to build a business, but in essence, what we realize at a certain point is we've just built a job, right? That we're just working harder than we ever have, putting in more hours, doing more than we ever have, and really not being able to reap the rewards of what we thought we were going to get when we went down this path of starting a company. Now, the science, if you will, that's behind all this. And that, by the way, is what our system is really grounded in, science and analytics, and it's understanding human behavior. And, most entrepreneurs, probably 90% of us that start out our own businesses because, at a deep level, if not a surface level, we have control issues, right? We need to be in charge. We need to be in control of our own destiny. We don't want other people to be in control of that, which is what sets us out to go out there and start and do our own thing. But so it's kind of our strength, if you will. And then at the same time, it becomes our weakness because that same control need keeps us from being able to delegate effectively to other people. We also, from another behavioral perspective that most of entrepreneurs possess, is a word called impatience. So most of us are extremely impatient people. And again, from a positive perspective, the impatience is what drives us, right? We want results. We want them now. We wanted them yesterday. We want more of them. And it makes us very proactive and results oriented, which is how we get a lot of things done. However, that too also becomes an Achilles heel, if you will, because, when we do try to bring on people, we're too impatient for their learning curve, or, we're too impatient with the lack of success that they're going to bring as quickly as we want, or they don't do it exactly the way we want it done. So you tend to go through a couple people, and what most small business owners will come around to the conclusion is, well, it's just easier for me to do it myself and know that it gets done properly and the way I want it done right, than try to, take a chance on bringing in people who are going to not do it that way. So we go through that dilemma, and that's probably what I've noticed, I know it was true for me and true for probably a majority of the CEOs I've coached over the years that have this dilemma, and you have to get to the point where you can give up that control. And it's a hard thing to do because, it's kind of ingrained in us. We were born with that intrinsic need, if you will. So that's probably one of the key elements that I find that drives us and also holds us back from getting to where we want to be. And it's something you have to recognize in order to pass the hurdle. So I'm going to pause there too for a minute. And so I'm not sure that I answered the question you were looking for, or am I on the right track and you just need to maybe guide me where you want me to go from here.
Yeah, and I appreciate you circling back to give me the chance to explain that too, because it's like I have a partner in my organization, right? They kind of quote unquote make partner, if you will, and that's our acquisition manager, and that's our person who is, handling the lead. And me, I used to be the guy handling the lead, and I did have that control issue, and I would see the really, let's face it, some leads are like, this is the deal. Like, no one really even has to have any skill to go get it done, or, with a minimum amount of skill, or I know with my higher level of skill, I can go in there, sign that thing up, and it's going to be like no problem, easy peasy. And I remember having this moment of having to like give up control on that, Mike, and give it to, my partner, acquisition manager at the time. And it was, I had to give up control, and like they didn't get the deal done. And so I remember like the pain of having to go through that, the cost. But luckily I was able to like push through that, and all of a sudden now, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, since that very moment, our company has grown, and we're in Atlanta. We're expanding back into Florida as we speak. We're in New Jersey. We're in Delaware. We're in Pennsylvania out of our Philadelphia regional office, and we're in Chicago, in Indiana here. So we're like a much larger organization than we've gotten to at that rate. And so I've been able to kind of give up control for that piece. But I'll tell you where I refuse to give up control is I'm the marketing guy, and I spend a lot of time, put a lot of care into everything that's written, that's going to be written by more than one, read by more than one person. So if an email is going out to our buyers list, it's going to be read by 1,000 people, 800 people, however many. I want to make sure that that's reviewed and touched and detail oriented. I have to have control. Same would go for letters. If I'm going to send a letter, it's going to have the same attention to detail. If we're going to run a TV or a radio ad or a Facebook ad, to a certain level, like I have to make sure that I'm watching these numbers and controlling it, because I'm kind of confident in my ability to control the amount of investment in certain lead types to make sure that things are kind of clicking along. And I honestly can never imagine a world where I would give up control for those marketing things. Is it, from your perspective and other CEOs, has something like that been relinquished, outsourced, attracted? Like, to me, that would be a very high skill set type of person would probably come with like a very large salary, I would guess, to pay somebody of kind of like a, chief marketing officer type of experience. And my God, the learning curve of bringing them up the curve of the complexity of like my business and organization and brand. Like, I know that I've grown it this far, and if I had handed that off a few years ago, like I know we wouldn't be at this place where we're at. So are there examples of people where their main core skill set was kind of duplicated out at that point that you've seen and it's been successful? And maybe on the flip side, Mike, maybe you have some that tried and crashed, and you thought maybe it should have been done a different way when they hired somebody, or there was some other method to bring them up the curve. So high skill set hiring would kind of be the topic I'd look for some elaboration on.
Yeah, well, so I'm going to kind of bring it around to, to going back to why we start our businesses in the first place, right? And I think a lot of us lose sight of that along the path. And for most entrepreneurs, that we want to control our own destiny. We want to make more money and ultimately have more freedom and a better lifestyle. Would you say that's a fair assessment for a majority of us?
Yeah, I would say for maybe when I started, it was just trying to pay the bills, and now I wake up and I have two purposes personally. One is to create a larger opportunity for the partners that are on my team, so I want them to experience that same life change that I've been blessed enough to experience, and then also we're out to transform the neighborhoods that we're doing business in. So our goal is to make the neighborhood that we are buying a house in even better. And for us, Mike, it doesn't matter. There has to be some economic sense there. Like, if the house has no value, we can't make the deal. That's one thing. We're not a charity. But if we can make a profit on the deal, it doesn't matter to us whether it's kind of a lower value neighborhood or we're talking about $1 million neighborhood. Like, we don't discriminate as a company as far as like, geographic, like many people do. So our mission really is, to buy and sell properties very quickly, providing a fast and convenient sale while also making that transformation happen. So it's changed a bit.
Yeah. Right. So I'll give you my own example, and maybe this will help bring some light to where I'm trying to go with answering your question. So we obviously do a lot of recruiting for our clients in my firm, and we had a client recently in Louisiana that I was heavily involved in helping them make 3 key hires to the team, and they're fast forward, they're about 8-9 months later, they're doing really well. And then, once we got into a groove, I turned it over, the rest of the hires we were making with them, to my recruiting manager. And, this one hire that he made, it was for an estimator for a big construction company. And the guy didn't work out, but, the guy didn't work out, not because he wasn't skilled or anything, but it was really because he had a bunch of personal issues that, just came out after that he started the job, which we've all probably experienced those kind of scenarios. But anyway, so I was talking to the COO, who's my point of contact at the company, our client company, about the issue. And he said, he goes, well, I hired a director of HR, and after we made those key hires, after Tim and I did, he said, and then kind of turned over the reins to her to drive it from here on forward, just like you said you did with your recruiting manager. And he goes, and I can't help but think that if you and I were involved, that, maybe we would have identified some of these issues in this person, prior to the hire, right? And after exploring it, I said, I'm not sure we would have, but, maybe, but maybe not. I said, but the bottom line is this, is that, while, your director of HR, my recruiting manager may not have the skill set that you and I have, because they just haven't been doing it near as long and, don't have that level of expertise. They're both really good at what they do. So, does this mean that we have to step back in and do their jobs for them? And if we do that, what message does that say to them about our ability to trust their level? Or, are we doing that, in lieu of, helping them to learn and grow, through this example or situation? I said, and rather, if we do that, take that approach, then, we're going to be constantly doing all the work. And this kind of goes back to where I was saying before that, this control issue that we have. But if we're doing everything, that we're not going to be able to scale our organizations, because there's only so many hours in the day, so much time we have that we can do it, no matter how good our expertise is. That being said, I hear what you're saying about your expertise with the leads and the marketing initiative. I mean, and that's really what we have to figure out for us. Well, what is our job? Where can we get the best, return on the investment of the time, effort, and expertise that we bring to the table? And for myself, while, I'm probably the best recruiter my company has, if I'm doing recruiting all day long, I'm not able to grow the company, because now I'm working in the business rather than on the business. So what I've recognized is, while I might be able to make a better hire today than my recruiting manager, I'm not going to scale that way. So my best time is rather than doing the recruiting, is to work with training and coaching and mentoring him to get him up to my level as quickly as possible. And if I'm doing the recruiting, it's going to take me years to get him there. If I'm focused on just developing him, I could probably have him there within 6 to 12 months. So not sure if that kind of, again, addresses your what you were looking for, but
we're
kind of
we're spot on. This is great. This is like light bulb moments for me personally. I appreciate it, because as you say, it's like, well, what is our job? And I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, what's my highest value skill set? And it's obvious now we have vice presidents that run each of these markets who do the face-to-face hiring for us. That's something that I used to do myself. They underwrite the deals. They do like a lot of that lead management. They're running that market. And that has allowed me personally to continue to develop my highest value skill set, which I think it was Peter Drucker that said, like, you're always supposed to focus on marketing or innovation or something along those lines. And it was marketing and innovation are probably my 2 highest skill sets. So it's not necessarily control. It's more paying just enough attention to the activity that's happening in my business to make sure I can make these tweaks, modifications, and bring my best moments, thoughts, ideas, and coaching to the team at the appropriate moment, and then trust them to do what they're going to do. So I really appreciate you going in that direction. So let's switch gears here, right? I need, another acquisition manager. We've got, I think, 14 or 13 of them right now, and our leads are coming in. And so, let's just, role play through that. I am looking for. Go ahead.
No, I just said okay. I'm with listening.
Gotcha.
Keep going.
I'm looking for an A player, right? Everyone in the business world, I want the A player. Let's talk about that a little bit. Can you define an A player from someone else, or help me define the A player? And then how does that business owner then attract these quote unquote A players?
Right. So you gotta start exactly where you're at. What makes up an A player? So one of the things I've learned is that they are not necessarily the best employee that you have. And that's kind of what people are led to believe, that, oh, they're the best of the best. But what really makes up an A player is not that they are the best, but that they are constantly trying to be better, right? So as long as you are green and growing and open to being coached and mentored and putting that effort out there, knowing that there's always a place to improve. In my world, that is how I define the first basis of an A player, because those people, they tend to bring a lot of integrity. They're willing to do whatever it takes, with that integrity to succeed and help the organization grow. They're not out just for themselves, but they realize that they have to improve their skill set constantly. And I'll give you the flip side of it, right? So years ago, I had a client company I was working with that they grew from 5 locations to, I think it was 14 locations in about a 4.5, 5-year period. And they were growing at about, I think, 35-40% annually. And then they had a flat year. Now, the flat year happened to be in 2010, right after the economy crashed. So, of course, that's what they blamed it on. But without going into a long story about what this company does, bottom line is they're really recession-proof. Their customers are mandated to use their service. So it didn't really matter once I started looking at it what the economy was doing. So what I learned was two things. The person that helped them and really led that growth was the VP of sales. He's the guy that really put them on the map. The CEO was the first one that admitted that. Most other employees I talked to said, yep, we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for that person. So as I started exploring, well, then why did they have this flat year if they're in a recession-proof kind of business? And what I realized was it was actually the VP of sales. The same guy that was responsible for the growth was the same guy responsible for their flat year. And when I figured this out, I sat down with the guy and he said this to me. He said, Mike, he goes, listen, he says, first off, I'm 52 years old and I'm too old to learn anything new. Now that was very telling right there in itself. Next, he followed up with, and in the next 2 to 3 years, I plan on retiring. Okay. So I started doing some more research around that and found out that, this guy had been making between $300,000 to $500,000 a year for the last 3 or 4 years. So he was pretty well off. He already had his retirement home paid off. The 2 to 3 years that he was going to retire, I found out he had 2 girls in college. And one of them was graduating in 2 years, the other one in 3 years. He just wanted that financial check off of the box, right? That he didn't have to worry about anything else, beyond that. And I also learned that their growth, to continue their growth, was to go international. And that meant going into the Middle East. It meant going into South America. And he also told me that he was just recently diagnosed with diabetes, and he had no interest in jumping on a plane and traveling all over the world. So, so now here's the situation you have, and here's a guy who, was an A player, up until that point where he decided he no longer wanted to put in that effort and do it. So it comes down to, can a person do the job? And the difference of, does the person want to do the job? And that's a huge mistake that most people make when they're hiring. They only look at the can they do it. So could the guy continue to grow it if he wanted to? Yes, he could. But he chose that different path that he said, hey, I'm too old, don't want to put the effort, don't want to travel. So no longer did he want to do it. And of course, he didn't want to admit that outright and stuff because he wanted that other 2 to 3 years to continue before he ended up retiring. So now you got a dilemma. So now you're the CEO of that organization, Dan. So what do? Do you fire the guy or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that you have to attract somebody else maybe for the international growth and have the VP work training this other new recruit up. To me, it sounds like a very high skill set type of hire, like I was describing a little earlier in our episode. I mean, how did it shake out?
Yeah. Well, so of course, the CEO said, what do you want me to do? Fire the guy who got me here? And it's like, no, that's the last thing I would recommend. Why would you fire a guy that helped you succeed that much? I said, but he's done well. The company's doing really well. I said, why don't you put him into a semi-retirement mode, pay him out, a couple of years worth of salary that he's looking for, and keep him on retainer for the expertise that, he has that can guide and help mentor and train the new person. And that's what we did because, yes, we needed a high-level person, but that person is high level, that we brought in, they still, did not have the expertise and level. And this is another mistake that I think most people think. They think, oh, well, this person was successful at a similar company in a similar role down the street, therefore they're going to be successful here. So people, the way that sums up is people tell me, well, just hire me somebody really good, everything will work out. Everything else will work out. And that's not the case. They still have to learn about your company, your products, your services, your systems and methodologies, how you do things, which means they have to be open to learning. And I don't care how smart you are, how good you are, that's still going to take 6 to 12 months minimum for the sharpest person to come in and figure those things out and make a few mistakes and learn how to do it. So that's kind of where we went down that path. So the key was I need to find an A player, someone who's at the top of their game, but doesn't realize that's the end game, that there's still much more to learn and do and be willing to be, coached and trainable. And that's another piece too, is an A player is defined as someone who's trainable and coachable. And there's a big difference. Trainable means you're smart enough to learn what they need to learn, right? And you could be the smartest person in the world. You could be a Mensa, right? But if you're a know-it-all and you're not open to being coached, doesn't matter how smart you are. It's not going to work. So you have to separate those two elements. So smart enough to learn and coachable, willing to listen and learn. And that's another key element of an A player. And those two things should be incorporated into everybody's hiring process. So covered a lot, but that give you something to.
Oh yeah.
And the bottom line story too, that company, just because I know you did ask. So once we brought that person in, the next year was still fairly flat. The following year, once that person got up to speed, they had 38% growth again.
So I wrote a couple things down. One of the things you said was that it's not the end game. And for my audience, for the REI Diamond Show listeners here, they might be able to relate with what I'm about to share. So when I got into the business of flipping houses, I was selling cars. And, the best year ever was like 40,000, 50, like not a lot of money at all. I was not very successful as a car salesperson before I got into flipping houses at 26. And then it was all of a sudden I'm flipping a house, making, 15,000, flipping another house, 3 or 4 of them go to settlement, and there's like 95,000 comes in all at once. So it kind of blew my mind a little bit, and not in a good way. And that's, I felt like, I had arrived, I'm set. It's probably a delusional place where that VP was, thinking like, well, I'm here, I'm at retirement because I've never made this kind of money ever in my life. And so it's like, it's a delusion because I'll see some of the same partners I have now. We have so many of them that when one guy kind of has a little bit of a slump, if you will, and has that like, all right, the end game, I made it sort of, as opposed to like, oh gosh, I got to stay engaged. I got to continue to do the things that got me here. And a lot of that has to do with being curious and being willing to learn and being coachable. Because the moment someone makes a good chunk of results or a good chunk of money, the danger zone can be that you're suddenly not coachable anymore. You're very smart. You got the deals done. You were making some money. Well, now the results come and you're feeling yourself. You got the Midas touch. You think everything you touch turns to gold. And who's going to tell you anything? You just made such and such an amount of dollars or such and such amount of results. So then that coachability goes down. And we're blessed that because of our team structure, we'll see some of our partners, if you will, they'll make that money and we'll catch it while they still have the money in the bank. They have plenty of money. They could pay all the bills. They could, do whatever they want lifestyle wise. They've hit goals or on track for their goals for the year. And for them, that's a danger zone that our organization is set up to kind of catch them and say, well, hey, hang on a second. Remember, this is a long game like it's real estate, and you're 3 to 6 months from now, the work has to be done now or your pipeline runs dry. And so we're able to kind of like get people back, and we're blessed to have like a very trainable in a sense that we have smart partners here, but also like a culture that gears toward and values at my company being coachable, working together, masterminding, coming up with better ideas, better systems of moving forward. And as you talk about the bringing on the new on board and the person, I don't know when Steve Jobs left Apple back in I think like the 90s or whenever it was, and the guy from Pepsi came in. I don't know whether he was open and coachable or not, but it was like, hey, he was successful at Pepsi, but not successful at Apple. And it was two totally different business models, let alone what it is. So talk about the onboard process. So like you said, like hire me someone good was your mention of one of your clients. Bring on someone good for me so they can solve the problem. They want this hands-off approach. What's the right mentality? I guess even a better question, Mike, is let's talk about the leadership. Who does the A player want to work with? Who is the right a business owner or a manager or a CEO that recognizes how to do the onboard when that A player joins the organization?
I'm not clear what you're asking in that question. Could you rephrase it? So I want to make sure I answer.
We got we have an A player, and he's going to come to work for a company, and you have a CEO, right, who's saying, Mike, just hire me a good guy and it's all fixed. And I would say that that's not the right mentality. And so you would have the way you have an A player, maybe there's an A quote unquote business owner or A quote unquote CEO. Like this is an A plus business owner who has the right mindset and mentality to work with, recognize the importance of the onboard process, and then successfully onboard this new hire. Like what does that manager, what are the qualities of that leader, that manager?
Well, if I'm understanding what you're saying, it's the recognition that no one person can accomplish this task of onboarding and getting this new person up to speed. It's a team effort. So even if it's a small team and there's 5 of you, right? Then it takes all 5 of you. If it's a little bit larger company, 25, 30 employees, then it could be at least 15 or 20 of those 30 people. That it is a team effort, but probably the most important piece, and this is kind of, again, I'll preface it with the mistake that most companies make, is you focus your training the new person on the job you hired them for. You hire a head of sales, head of marketing, head of production, whatever it is, then you're training them in that particular area around how you guys do sales, how you do marketing. And that's kind of a mistake because in order for anyone to excel in a leadership role, when you're hiring leaders, they have to understand the entire business just like you, the CEO. So that coming back to, I think your question is, this smart CEO, the leader, understands this piece that any other leader in his company, and it could be even a middle manager, right? You hire a sales manager, an operations manager, for me, a recruiting manager. They need to understand all aspects of the company. Now, the caveat is they don't need to understand how to do every job in the company, but they need to understand how those different roles function, what their purpose is, how they integrate and work with each other. And by understanding that, you create a collaborative team environment, but a holistic approach to understanding your organization. So if you take any CEO, most CEOs of particularly small organizations, right, like we're talking about, they understand all aspects of their organization and the components that make it effective, right? Again, still you might have some people that are better at certain jobs than you, but you at least understand the elements and the importance that the company needs those roles. So every leader in the organization has to have that understanding, and the quicker that you can train them on those elements, which means having a structured onboarding training program over the first, could be a week, could be a month, right? But the faster and more structured and spread out, meaning this goes back to what I said at the team effort, that you can spread that out, that, they're going to spend an hour with this person and 20 minutes with this person, or maybe, a half a day with this person, and you map that out over the first couple, 2, 3, 4 weeks on the job, then there is no reason, if you hire the right person who has the knowledge, skill, and behaviors to be able to succeed in that role, they now have in that first, 2 to 4 weeks of training they need, an understanding of how the organization works. There's no reason that they can't become a fully productive member of your company going into month 2. So did that answer what you were looking for?
Yeah, it does. It's very interesting. So I'm thinking, okay, it's my role as the CEO, or let's say the vice president, and I'm going to engage this next person and we're going to bring them up the curve. And I think about how important it is to have the entire team, and the entire team, like you said earlier, willing to contribute to the company's value, willing to participate in the onboarding. I mean, I think that, harkens back to some of the company's culture that's helping lead to its success, but to be intentional of that and aware of that as you're bringing that on board. It's not a one-person system. It's also not a manual of, okay, here, read this and you're done, like it was when I started at jobs back when I used to work at places. So really, really impactful stuff. Can you talk about your XP3 talent system a little bit, Mike? I mean, let's say I was listening in and I was considering, okay, a whole lot more about onboarding, recruiting, and I didn't realize this was such a science. What is it about your system, process, your company, that makes it such a valuable proposition for somebody who's considering engaging your service?
Okay, so I'll put it this way. So to answer that, it's a 3-pronged system, which kind of comes with, our name, XP3. So there's magic in the number 3. And part of that magic is that it's the simplicity. It's the number that most of us human beings can retain, information around 3 things. We really sometimes don't even care when it goes beyond that. So you keep things simplistic. So from that standpoint, I mentioned earlier, you can't just hire great people and then hope that they're going to learn and do what they need to. So the next step is part of your system and our system, the XP3 talent system we teach, is you have to have that onboarding training program over the first, 30 days or so. That's a collaborative effort, as I said, that's going to teach them about the whole organization. And by the way, I'll also give you a flip side of this that's important that I didn't mention before. And sometimes the contrast always helps people to understand it better. Are you familiar with the silo syndrome?
Yeah, where one person gets so comfortable with like their division or their portion of the company. So let's say marketing, the guy who's doing marketing, with exclusion to how the sales department is actually doing the selling, or maybe the fulfillment section of the business is actually shipping the product and creating it. That siloed marketing person or what have you could cause problems for it systemically. Is that the right assumption?
Yep, exactly. So people operate in silos. It's the us against them, and using, even sales and production, right? It's the production people who are building the product or delivering it, whatever, they're like, oh, those damn salespeople, they're just, cowboys out there making promises we can't deliver on. And they really have no understanding of what sales really is. What they do. But conversely, the salespeople are, blaming the production people or claiming victory of, you guys wouldn't even have jobs if it wasn't for us bringing in all the business, right? And again, same thing. They have no idea what each other does. And the best way to break that down is this cross-training mentality I was talking about. So, if you're hiring a salesperson, that should be the last thing you train them in, because they're going to have their whole career to work and learn in that area. So they need to learn about, marketing. Like if you're going to be handing them a lead, right? Well, how was that lead developed? What went into that? What did that cost? So when you hand them a lead, it's like, hey, that's worth $1,000 or whatever it is, and you want a return on it. And they understand the components behind that. And now they have that mentality and commitment to go out and do it. Conversely, when we hire production people, a lot of times we'll actually train them in the sales side. Again, we don't have to teach them how to sell, but we have them attend sales meetings. We'll have them go on ride-alongs, if possible. And, they just to help them understand what the sales team actually does and that, it's hard work just like every other job. And then you're building collaborative teams. And this is kind of the key. It's about building relationships in that first 30 days with as many people in the organization as possible, because this leads to the third cog in the system, which is the retention piece, right? And one of the things we've learned from the research we've done is that the more relationships an employee has with as many different employees in the organization, the less likely they are to leave when things get tough, because they don't want to let their teammates down. But also when they come across those challenges, right? That sales guy's out there, comes across that one deal that's kind of new, or he goes, oh, I remember when I worked with Pete, the production guy, he actually talked about this and said, if I ever run across it, pick up the phone, give him a call, and he'll help me work through it, right? So you're building a collaborative environment. But then the keeping them, the retention piece is the third piece. And the retention piece is really, it used to be about the word management, right? How do we manage people? But if you think about it, management has a pretty negative connotation attached to it, meaning nobody wants to be managed, right? we all want to be self-confident, self-motivated people and feel that we don't need somebody, managing, babysitting us. But that being said, going back to your first question about A players, right? So another thing we know about A players, as I said, they're open to being coached and mentored. They understand the value, right? So that means to be a highly effective manager in today's world, you have to be a highly effective coach. And most people, while they don't want to be managed, they want to be on the winning team. And that involves having a great coach who's going to inspire and motivate them. But there's, again, science and methodologies of how you actually go about doing it. And most people make it a lot tougher than it is. So quick example there is, extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. So if you're not aware, the extrinsic motivation is what most of us focus on, which is, hey, I want to buy a new car or a new house, right? Or, so I need to make some money to be able to do that or take a vacation. Now, if the manager's aware of that desire and need, there are things he can do to dangle that carrot in front of their face to get them to work a little harder, make a little more money or whatever it's going to take to earn it. But the problem with those extrinsic motivations is they're short-lived, all right? So even if the manager can figure that out, right, how much are you really going to be able to inspire and impact them? And eventually, once they achieve it, right, it's gone. Now you have to constantly find what's the next shiny object I'm going to dangle in front of them. So intrinsic motivation are things we're born with, right? And it's based on our core personality. So a simple personality profile will reveal most of these intrinsic needs. So, for example, I talked earlier about, us having, us entrepreneurs having the need for control. Well, that need for control, which also goes with independence and autonomy, those are intrinsic needs for people, that are type A personalities, like most of us entrepreneurs. If you're that impatient person I talked about, well, an intrinsic need is variety and a fast pace. Because if you have that impatient, fast-paced urgency, you get bored with the routine stuff. So you need a lot of variety and challenges to keep you inspired. Well, those things, those intrinsic motivational needs like that, are forever. You're born with them, you're going to die with them. And if you can create an environment that supports those intrinsic needs, you only got to put them in place most of the time once and just maintain them and make sure they stay that way in order to keep those people highly motivated and focused. And now you're getting to the subconscious level, the root cause of what truly motivates people. So that's an example of what it takes to be a great performance coach in today's world and to keep those people sticking around and producing for you. So those are the three.
Clear.
Yep.
Yeah, that's solid. To be clear, Mike, the intrinsic values might be slightly different depending on the personality type.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I said a simple personality profiling tool will identify, because like go the opposite of the type A personalities, that like we said, we need control, independence, autonomy. Well, the people who are wired the opposite, they don't want that independence. They want a collaborative, supportive team around them and a very supportive boss. And, they want harmony in the workplace. So example, even what, say, two type A personalities might consider a very engaging and, fun conversation, stimulating, those other people that are wired the opposite might look at that and go, gosh, why are you guys at conflict? Why are you yelling at each other? And we're like, we're not at conflict or yelling. We're just having a stimulating discussion. So it's very different. Yes. And everybody is born with these intrinsic needs, and they're very simple to figure out, through understanding how to extrapolate that data out of a simple personality profile. So that give you the insight, the answer you're looking for to that.
Oh yeah, we've went deep on a bunch of topics here. I'm curious, as we kind of get toward our wrap up here, is there anything I forgot to ask that I should have asked that you feel like would help put a cap on our conversation, or that you feel the listeners just need to hear, Mike?
Oh, anything else? Well, other than just if they're this subject and what we've been talking about is intriguing, it would be just where to learn more. But I don't know, maybe that's not where you were going yet.
Yeah, we're on our way around that corner. So what two books do you recommend, Mike, to your clients most often? I'd assume that one of them is going to be Hire, Train, and Retain, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no, you're right. You're right. Obviously, I gotta plug my own book and stuff. But besides that, one of the probably the most impactful books for me that I always recommend to everybody is a book called First Break All the Rules. So it was a book that was produced in 1990 by the Gallup organization. And the subtitle of that book is What the World's Greatest Managers Do Differently. And Gallup conducted a 25-year research project on all different size organizations around the world, different cultures, different industries, et cetera. And they were looking for that magic sauce. And they identified some key elements that all, the greatest managers in the world, and some of these things I'm talking about, that for example, they know how to hire top talent, right? They have a system and a methodology. They're not just using their gut winging it. They know how to train and develop people to be their best, as opposed to, developing them into what's known as the Peter principle, which is we promote people to their level of incompetency. So we set them up for failure because we think because they were the best salesperson, they're going to be the best sales manager, right? Or the best, accountant's going to be the best CFO. And it's very different. That there are different roles. They take different knowledge, skills, and behaviors, and that's not always the case. So they understand those things. So that book, First Break All the Rules, is been probably one of my Bible go-to books, And, if I had to throw a third one, I got to give kudos to our friend David Finkel, and it's his book, Scale. He's written, about a dozen books, but Scale kind of comes back to the same approach where, my book, Hire, Train, and Retain, is going to give you a complete system for hiring, training, and retaining people. His book, Scale, is kind of the similar approach, but to the whole organization. How do you put in the systems and processes in your operations? How do you, put the right things in place for your sales and marketing initiatives, to manage your finances? So that book has been very instrumental. And one of the key elements that I just want to point out there, if you're not aware, is it in every one of those, what he calls pillars of the organization, the thing that we, the owners, CEOs, need to be focused on is creating our independence from those pillars. Because the true valuation of your organization is when it's completely independent from you and it doesn't need you to do anything. So those are probably the three books that I would recommend.
Nice, appreciate that. Yeah, David did. I think his co-author might have been Jeff Hoffman of Priceline founder, which people probably also recognize. David has a ton of great books. I've made a lot of money from David's information personally over the years, so I Definitely we'll put an underline on that one too. And of course yours too, not to take away. Did you want to touch on a bit what's in your book there, if anyone was interested?
Yeah, well, again, it gives you a complete system how to do it, including free tools and stuff, which are also available at our website. You can download, but they're also in the book, on how to hire the right people, how to get them productive in the first 30 days, and then how to keep those people, which is really about how to become that highly effective performance coach. So it talks about, the system, the process, the tools. So everything you kind of need to implement that is there. And I'll also say this, I realize that, since I've done this, there are other systems out there for doing similar things. And so I know my system isn't the only one out there anymore. Obviously I'm partial to it, but one thing I would tell people is, whether it's my system or some other system, stop winging it. Stop trying to use your gut to figure this stuff out. It's been figured out already, but it's only as good as the people who are using that system, like anything. So whatever one you adopt, embrace it wholly and make sure every person in your organization is behind that system. Because, that kind of comes back to we're only as strong as the weakest link. And if you've got one manager who's not on board with whatever that system is and they're doing their own thing, it's going to undermine all the effort and work that everyone else is doing on that one system. So must be alignment to it.
Nice. So, Mike, if you could go back and share the crown jewel of wisdom, I don't know, 18, 20-year-old self, what would that be?
Well, for me personally, it would be a mantra that my wife has been teaching me over the last, 7 years. And she says, be the turtle. So meaning sometimes slow and steady and methodical, rather than trying to, do things quickly and look for the quick fix and the fast and furious way of doing things. So I've always kind of, and it's driven from that impatient urgency that I have. Again, it's been what's made me successful, but it's also been what's held me back in many situations. So slow down, be more patient, be more purposeful and methodical about what you're going to do in life.
Yeah, it's funny. We start off, certainly me in the business career, and maybe a lot of people could relate to it, but it's kind of like we're conditioned on one side, Mike, to hear, do it now, don't procrastinate. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. But then as you get a little more seasoned in your, patient execution, that slow and steady and like keeping all my projects moving at a pace where they're still all moving, as opposed to like starting 52 different projects and only keeping one or two of them moving. Hopefully those are the winners. Man, it's a whole lot more efficient and effective, I guess. It's great advice there. So how can listeners get more Mike Matalone?
Well, again, they can read the book, which is available on Amazon, Hire, Train, Retain. You can go to our website, xp3talent.com, or email me directly, mike@xp3talent.com. I'm happy to, provide some free advice, consultation to anybody and point them in the right direction. So the last piece, I guess, obviously would be if they want to go the old-fashioned route and actually pick up the phone. So my phone number, our main line is 540-369-4469.
Nice. And that I will include that the URL in the show notes here, but that's XP3. That's like X-ray, not the letter S like snake. So X-ray XP3 talent.com. Cool. Well, correct. Hey.
Now, and for what it's worth, Dan, if interested, I'll go a step further. If they tell me that they learned about it from your show here, and they're interested in taking a test drive with the personality profile and the intrinsic needs, I'm happy to run one of those for free for them if they mention that they learned about it from your show.
I like it. So remember to mention the REI Diamond Show. Hey, Mike, I appreciate that gesture for our listeners, and I also appreciate your time today. I know I got a ton of value out of our time here together, and I'm sure the listeners did as well. So thank you for coming on the show.
Well, I thank you, Dan. I appreciate the opportunity. Obviously, I'm passionate about what I do. Hopefully it comes through, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some of what I know. But, I practice what I preach. So I work with a coach. So I'm always trying to learn more. So, every interaction I have, I try to do that. And I've gotten a lot out of this as well. So I appreciate that, Dan. Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to the REI Diamond Show. Are you interested in early notification of future episode releases? You can subscribe on YouTube or through the podcasting apps, including iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts, among the others. Just search REI Diamonds and click subscribe. You can also sign up to receive the weekly new episode notification email at reidiamonds.com. So my main business is buying and selling houses. 223 houses bought and sold in 2019, and 113 bought and sold so far in 2020. We currently have another 109 houses in our inventory, either under construction, for sale, or sold and awaiting closing. So here are 3 ways you and I can do business. Number 1, if you buy houses in Atlanta, Chicago, or the Philadelphia regions, go to dealswithroi.com. That's return on investment, ROI. So it's dealswithroi.com, and sign up for the correct buyers list, as there are 5 lists there total, separated by region. You'll want to make sure you're on the correct deal region page when you sign up to receive those specific emails. Number 2, if you are an accredited investor and you'd like to passively fund a deal or fund many deals, go to fundrehabdeals.com and sign up to receive private mortgage investment opportunity emails. And number 3, if you have a deal for sale in either Atlanta, Chicago, or the Philadelphia tri-state region, anywhere about a 2-hour radius driving from downtown in any one of those cities, please send me an email with the details. And today I actually have a 4th reason here, a 4th way you and I can do business. And that's actually the reason I do the REI Diamond Show, is that my company is growing, Diamond Equity Investments, and I am always on the lookout for A players to round out our team. You can check for specific positions that might be available anytime by clicking the careers link at reidiamonds.com. If you're good at negotiating real estate deals and you are a hustler and willing to work, we likely have a seat on the bench for you. Up next, we have Lawrence Jankolo joining us to discuss his free rental management platform. If you currently self-manage your rentals or are considering buying and self-managing your rentals, and you're currently using, nothing more than an Excel spreadsheet, you will definitely want to catch this upcoming episode. Until then, my friend, remain safe and remain prosperous.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the REI Diamonds Show with Dan Breslin. To receive email notifications of new weekly episodes, sign up at www.reidiamonds.com.